أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل بسم الله الله أكبر الله أكبر جل جلاله ربي الله أكبر الله أكبر جل جلاله ربي أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أشهد أن عليا ولي الله عليه الصلاة والسلام أشهد أن عليا حجة الله عليه الصلاة والسلام حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له بسمه اللهم اجعل قلبي بارا وشيكارا وبلسانا ورزقي دارا وأولادي برارا وجعلني عند قبر نبيك مستقرا وقرارا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم صل على محمد. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, with apologies for the technical difficulties. Over the last few weeks, we have been talking about the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam with regard to how we interact with our fellow believers
and our relationships within society. And one of the areas that has been very highly emphasized is the importance of justice. Sometimes when we deal with other people, we deal with them on the basis of our preferences, on the basis of our whim. We deal with them on the basis of a family loyalty or a tribal loyalty, maybe a nationalism. But the foundation of our relationships always must be justice. We can go above the basis of justice for those that we have a loyalty to. So if you are a family member, if you are a friend, if you are a loved one, then I can do more for you than justice requires. That is not something that Islam discourages. But the opposite is what usually happens, that if I have a friend or a family member, then I am willing to be unfair to others in order to benefit them. And that is what Islam has prohibited. And in particular for those who are the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam, and in particular the followers of Imam Ali alayhis salam, justice is the foundation of our faith and our practice. The practice of Ahlul Bayt was so closely associated with justice that even a non-Muslim thinker, Christian by faith, has expressed the sentiment accurately that Imam Ali was killed because of his justice. And many Muslims have also expressed a similar sentiment, that when Imam Ali was buried in his grave, it wasn't an individual being buried, but it was justice that was being buried. And then when we look to the promise that Islam has given us through Ahlul Bayt, accepted by Sunni and Shia Muslims, that there will be a Mahdi at the end of time who will come and lead the Muslims. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So what is the role of the Mahdi? That yamla'ul arda adlan wa qista. He will fill the world with justice and equity. And if Islam is going to spread and defeat unbelief and falsehood and oppression and all of the ills that come in human society through our satanic temptations, then Imam Mahdi is going to do that through justice, not through any other means. So these are just some reminders for us of the importance of justice. The extent of the importance of justice is that our Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alih, he would be just even with regard to how he divided not his money, not his possessions, but his attention when he was sitting with his companions. We find in a hadith, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يقسم لحظاته بين أصحابه عليكم السلام فينظر إلى ذا وينظر إلى ذا بالسوية. When Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وآله was sitting with a number of his companions, if he was sitting with, say, 3 companions, then he would divide lahadatihi. Lahadat is the glances. He would divide how much he would look or attend to each of those companions. فَيَنْظُرُ إِلَى ذَا وَيَنْظُرُ إِلَى ذَا بِالسَّوِيَّةِ. He would speak equally and look equally and attend equally to them. Imagine how much discipline and how much care it takes not to give more attention to the person that we are closer in age and culture and personality to, or the person who happens to be closest to me, but to try to give attention equally to all of the companions. This is just one small example that gives us a sense of the standard of justice that was set by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his progeny. And that is an ideal that we should also strive towards, in particular when we come together in our Islamic centers. Sometimes we have groups that form through friendship, through common interests, through common language or career, and you'll find that somebody is sitting alone. Especially younger members of our community, I will say that if you have your friends and you're talking or discussing something, you see somebody your age that has not come to the masjid before, ask them their name, find out what their interests are, include them in your group. Because if you are 5 or 6 people sitting, they might be shy to come and ask you who you are and can they join you. But if you invite them, then you might make a new friend. And the same thing applies to those of us who are adults. If there is a new person who comes into the center, especially if they look like they may have just moved here or they may not be that familiar, then make them feel welcome and give them your attention. And even among those people whom we know, let us divide our time and send our du'as and salam to those who we don't have as much time to speak to, and not just those people that we are very close to. That is the sunnah of our Prophet, which we learn from and adopt. Another hadith of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, he describes justice very beautifully, and just because of the beauty of this hadith, I will read it and translate it. The Imam says, Al-adlu junnatun waqiya wa jannatun baqiya. Justice is a shield that protects. Junnatun waqiya. And it is jannatun baqiya. It is a garden that is everlasting. Meaning that it has a benefit in this world. When you are just, then it protects you from hatred, from instability, from undermining your own collective interests because of whim or personal desire. But not only is justice good for this world, good for your family, good for your society, it is also Jannatun Baqiyah. That is what brings the everlasting reward of paradise. And so for both reasons, whether our worldly interests or our eternal spiritual interests, we should give importance to acting and supporting justice in society. Now, the Imams have given a great deal of emphasis both to speaking and to acting justly. But we should always remember that it is easier to describe something than to do something. It's very easy for me to say, I care about the environment. It is more difficult for me to change my behavior to show that I actually care. You'll find many people who live the most wasteful lives, celebrities and the elite of society. They will have a banner that they care about climate change. But then they probably use more resources, consume more resources than maybe an entire small village in another part of the world. And not just them, their pets probably consume more resources than maybe an entire village in another part of the world. It's very easy to say I care about the environment, but it's another thing to actually change my behavior and show it. The same thing is true in our religious life. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam cautions us against criticizing or describing others or for others what is good behavior, but forgetting ourselves. In this hadith, the Imam says, "Inna wilayatana la tudraku illa bil amal." If you want to have the wilaya of Ahlul Bayt, the wilaya of Ahlul Bayt is not just by saying something. The wilaya of Ahlul Bayt is not just by claiming something. The wilaya of Ahlul Bayt is not just by reciting poetry with your tongue. The wilaya of Ahlul Bayt requires our words and our hearts to be in line with Ahlul Bayt, but it also requires amal. Inna wilayatana la tudraku illa bil amal. You must act. وَإِنَّ أَشَدَّ النَّاسِ حَسْرَةً يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ رَجُلٌ وَصَفَ عَدْلًا ثُمَّ خَالَفَ إِلَى غَيْرِهِ. The person who will have the greatest regret, hasra, on the Day of Judgment is somebody who spoke about what is good, but then didn't practice it. Because that is a person who knew. That is a person who had the chance to acquire a great blessing and a great reward in the hereafter. And they will see what they described as their potential reward. And then they will see that they are deprived of it. It's one thing for me never to see that beautiful garden or that beautiful mansion that Allah has prepared for the believers in the hereafter. But if I see it, and then I am told this was meant to be for you, but because you only spoke about it and you didn't do it, you will not have it. That will bring the greatest regret on the Day of Judgment, in the words of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Another important point with regard to justice is that we should live in a society where we allow good relations, just relations to thrive. And sometimes our own personality is something that undermines a good relationship. Let me just give you one example. It's a hypothetical example, but it's not uncommon. If I want to get married. Now, there are two ways to approach that marriage. One is good faith, and say that I trust you are acting in good faith, I am acting in good faith. If I need to do some inquiries about the family, about the individual, about their character, about their background, then I can do those inquiries, and then I can proceed on the basis of good faith. The other approach is to be very doubtful. Well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And then I try to make a plan for every possibility ahead of time with a cynical or a negative view. Financially, personally, decision making. Now, if I take the second course, I might think I'm protecting myself. I want to be safe. I don't want to be taken advantage of. But what's actually going to happen? The very fact that I am making all of those inquiries and questions and bringing up all of those issues that may or may not take place is going to make it more likely that the negativity will enter into the relationship. If I don't have trust in my children, if I don't have trust in my spouse, if I don't have trust in my friends, then there will never be a healthy relationship that can come. But at the same time, we have to be careful. We have to be wise to the fact that not everyone, even in our families, even in our friends, is always going to be sincere. There is a general principle that Ahlul Bayt have given us. This is a general principle, and then specifics can be discussed at a separate time. But this general principle is, how do we deal with balancing the need to protect ourselves from harm, which is an Islamic obligation, from the desire to have good faith and optimism. the need to protect ourselves is mentioned in numerous ahadith. Just in one example, one of the sons of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, he invested some money with a fellow Muslim, and that person acted irresponsibly and that money was lost. And the son of our sixth Imam said that, "Oh Allah, I ask you to recover for me what I lost. I acted in good faith and my trust was not held up." And Imam Ja'far Sadiq overheard that prayer and said, "Did you not hear that that person had bad character, a specific sin that was mentioned in the hadith? Did you not hear that this person had bad character?" And the person said, "Well, I didn't want to believe a rumor, so I ignored it." And the Imam said, "Don't ask Allah to help you recover what you have lost. Allah will help you recover what you lost if you act in accordance with His commands and you act responsibly. This was your negligence. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not promised to cover your losses from negligence. The insurance policy doesn't cover, the divine insurance policy doesn't cover your own negligence. So you do have to be responsible, but you don't want to be cynical. What is that balance? The general principle that we operate on? It's mentioned in a hadith from Imam Ali al-Naqi al-Hadi alayhi salatu wassalam. It is reported from him, إِذَا كَانَ زَمَانٌ الْعَدْلُ فِيهِ أَغْلَبُ مِنَ الْجَوْرِ فَحَرَامٌ أَن تَظُنَّ بِأَحَدٍ سُوءًا حَتَّى يُعْلَمَ ذَلِكَ مِنْهِ. If you live in a time when generally justice is more prevalent than injustice, you live in good times, then it is haram to assume the worst about a person unless you have evidence to doubt that person's sincerity. Don't introduce negativity into a culture, a context, a relationship where there is no basis for it. وَإِذَا كَانَ زَمَانٌ الْجَوْرُ أَغْلَبُ فِيهِ مِنَ الْعَدْلِ. But if you live in a time where falsehood, cheating, theft, injustice is more prevalent than justice. فَلَيْسَ لِأَحَدٍ أَن يَظُنَّ بِأَحَدٍ خَيْرًا مَا لَمْ يَعْلَمْ ذَلِكَ مِنْهِ. It is not permissible for anyone to assume the good in someone else until they test it. So what is this hadith telling us? It's telling us that have a sense of what kind of society, what kind of culture you are living in, and use that as the basis. So if you are in a healthy environment, I'm not introducing cynicism and poison because of my own negativity. But if I am living in an unhealthy environment, I am not being gullible and naive and assuming everybody is good, and then I will be taken advantage of, and in fact, I am making it easier for those who are dishonest to commit dishonesty. We have here a general principle that we can apply in our relationships, and the goal is to strengthen good relations and just relations among humanity, and in particular among believers. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to this path of justice and advocating and practicing the cause of justice, so we are in line with the practice and the teachings of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad alayhimus salatu wassalam. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Abil Qasim Muhammad. وعلى علي أمير المؤمنين وعلى فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وعلى الحسن والحسين وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين صلوات. I seek forgiveness from Allah for myself and for all of us present and for all mu'mineen and mu'minat. May Allah forgive our sins and guide us to do that which is pleasing to Him. In the previous khutbah, we looked at the importance of justice, advocating and practicing justice, and related to that is the importance of strengthening our own conscience and feeling responsible for injustice within society. Just a few of the teachings of Ahlul Bayt in this regard, inshallah, in the second khutbah. The first hadith is from one of the companions of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu was-salam, by the name of Al-Harith ibn al-Mughira. It is said the Imam told him that لَتُحْمَلَنَّ ذُنُوبُ سُفَهَائِكُمْ عَلَىٰ عُلَمَائِكُمْ. Those of you with knowledge will be responsible for the sins of those of you who are ignorant. Sometimes in society we see an evil act in our Muslim community and we judge the person, we condemn the person, or inwardly we look down on that person, but we don't actually do anything to change it. The Imam says that those of you who know what is wrong will be responsible for the sins of those who are foolish. They might not be ignorant, but they are foolish, sufaha. And this person said that I left, then I came back to the Imam because it was a concern that I'm not committing a sin. I'm not doing anything wrong. How can I be responsible for what others are doing? And then the Imam said that the responsibility is because when you hear about something that a person is doing which gives a bad name to Islam, gives a bad name to Ahlul Bayt, if somebody is in the name of Islam committing a crime, or even if somebody's name is Muhammad, they're not committing a crime in the name of Islam, but in the newspaper it's going to come, Muhammad is the one who robbed that store. That brings a bad name to our faith, to our Prophet, to our values. So what is wrong with you that you don't go and you don't remind that person of what is right? You don't try to convince them not to continue down that path. And the companion says that, well, people don't listen to us. They don't obey us. What can we do? The Imam says that still you should show a reaction. إِذَنْ فَهْجُرُوهُ عِنْدَ ذَلِكَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا مُجَالَسَتَهُ. At least don't attend, don't support, don't associate, and give strength to that person. If they're not going to listen, then you don't have an obligation to say anything to them because there is no benefit. But sometimes indirectly we don't show sensitivity. And so indirectly we give that person the ability to commit evil or injustice within society. According to a hadith of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, he said that there is a sign of those people who are lucky, as-sa'id, somebody who achieves salvation, is fortunate, is lucky. As-sa'idu man wu'idha bighayrihi. A lucky person is somebody who sees others' actions and learns a lesson from that without having to make their own mistake, without having to be warned or scolded or suffer themselves. And that is the sign of a person with a healthy conscience, that our conscience doesn't need to experience something in order to give us a message and remind us what is right, but I observe society. I learn from the stories in the Quran, and I learn from what I am observing around myself, and I use that to gain insight about what is right. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the benefit of these lessons from Ahlul Bayt, and may He guide our hearts and purify our intentions and our actions. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsani wa ita'i dhil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi ya'idhukum la'allakum tadhakkarun. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد ذلك الله ربنا. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله الله الله. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا علي يا عظيم يا غفور يا رحيم أنت رب العظيم الذي ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. وهذا شهر عظمته وكرمته وشرفته وفضلته على الشهور. وهو الشهر الذي فرضت صيامه علي. وهو شهر رمضان الذي أنزلت فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. وجعلت فيه ليلة القدر وجعلتها خير من ألف الشهر. فيا ذا المن ولا يمن عليك من علي بفكاك رقبتي من النار في من تمن عليه وأدخل الجنة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
صلاة العصر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار بحق محمد وآله الأبرار اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله وقوته الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر
سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم أدخل على أهل القبور السرور. اللهم أغن كل فقير. اللهم أشبع كل جائع. اللهم اكس كل عريان. اللهم اقض دين كل مدين. اللهم فرج عن كل مكروب. اللهم رد كل غريب. اللهم فك كل أسير. اللهم أصلح كل فاسد من أمور المسلمين. اللهم اشف كل مريض. اللهم سد فقرنا بغناك. اللهم غير سوء حالنا بحسن حالك. اللهم اقض عنا الدين وأغننا من الفقر إنك على كل شيء قدير. أمير المؤمنين. السلام على فاطمة الزهراء. السلام على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. السلام على الأئمة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين. السلام عليكم جميعا أهل بيت النبوة ورحمة الله وبركاته.